Bill Walsh, former head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Out of the 32 head coaches in the NFL, 20 of them came from the tree of talent. The tree of talent from Bill Walsh, either his protégés or his protégés' protégés. What is behind this? Why is it the case that we have these industries with one person that has this incredible amount of influence? I call those people superbosses, and that's what they are. These people, they break the rules. How do you hire people? You come up with a job description, and then you have your 5 or 6 or 10 criteria, and you go through all the resumes, and you interview the best people, and you make check marks, and whoever gets the most check marks wins, and they get the job. Superbosses don't do that. They look for talent first. They look for great talent first, and then they'll create the job for them. One of my favorite stories of this is Ralph Lauren. He's at a restaurant in New York. He's there with his family. Sitting nearby, there's a table with some other people he didn't know. And this happens in a restaurant. You strike up a conversation, you're chatting a little bit, and he gets kind of intrigued by a woman that's sitting at a table right next to him about how she was dressed, how she kind of put together her clothes. And they're talking and off for space of a couple hours. And he says to her, if you have a chance, maybe you can come by the office tomorrow. I'd love to offer you a job. And then he gives her his card. She didn't know who it was. Can you imagine? She looks at this card. Ralph Lauren. He wants to give me a job. Whoa! That's a weird way to hire people, isn't it? But that's what, superbosses are willing to go and do these kind of seemingly crazy things. It's almost like an analog method to how to run a business in a digital world. So, what do superbosses do differently? Number one, it's how they think about talent. Number two, they are geniuses at motivation. We live in a world where people are working like crazy. Well, what about something else called inspiration? And that's one of these fuzzy words, right? What about instilling confidence into people? This is a big differentiator I found of superbosses. Not only do they push you hard, but at the same time, they give you the confidence to believe that you are the one, instilling this sense that we can create anything, and truly believing it. And imagine you work for a place like that. Bill Sanders, when I interviewed some of the people that worked for him, they were saying things like, a couple of different people, independent interviews, were saying things like, I couldn't wait to start working. As soon as I heard what he was trying to do, it was as if there was a train going down the tracks. And I had to get on that train before it took off. My life depended on it. It's unbelievable. Imagine having a job like that. Number three, they unleash creativity. How many people live in a world where whatever you're doing is just not quite right? It's not enough. Just do your job and keep your mouth shut. What about actually doing your job and at the same time also looking for opportunities to be a little different, to come up with new ways of thinking about things? Every one of the superbosses they're really innovative in their own businesses. George Lucas, another great superboss. Think about what the movies would be like if George Lucas didn't do what he did. And I'm not even talking about Star Wars. I'm talking about the development of digital technologies. When he started, he had an idea of a story he wanted to tell. There was no technology available to do it. And so he decided to start multiple technology companies to make that happen. And he hired all these young people that wanted to change the world. Again, I talked to some of those people, and they said the same thing. It was like a dream to work for George Lucas. It was a dream to be part of that. What an energizing, exciting thing to be able to create. Fourth, how did people develop? How did people get better or learn their jobs for centuries? You know what it was? It was called an apprenticeship. Leonardo da Vinci learned as an apprentice. Everyone started that way. That's kind of how it works. What has happened to that? You know what's happened? We call it education. Right? You got your degree, you head off, and you can do anything. It turns out that it's not quite so simple as that. Superbosses create what is as close to an apprenticeship as you're ever going to get. And what does that mean? They do two things at the same time that most people look at and say, you can't do both of those things. They delegate and delegate big to the right people. They'll give big opportunities. And they don't just delegate and forget. They are really close to, or maybe even in, the micromanagement world. If you delegate big, give huge opportunities to people, and then periodically you kind of jump in, you roll up your sleeves, you work closely together, you provide the type of know-how and capability that you've got, you push people to another level, that adds tremendous amount of value. And it's one of the paradoxes, I think, of a lot of the superbosses. They do two things that many people think are opposites, which brings me to the fifth kind of major characteristic about superbosses. Cohort effect. You bring a group of people together, really talented people, you put them together and they work together and they actually get better just by the mere fact that they are working together and interacting. It is the secret formula behind both Tuck and Dartmouth. You get really good people. And people like me, the professors, we don't have to do anything. People are going to get better. Now, hopefully we add a little bit of value every now and then, but just having that type of connection. But of course, Superbosses always go a little further. And you know what they do? They combine, again, two things that many people consider to be opposites. My favorite example of this is Lorne Michaels from, obviously, SNL. So how do you get on SNL as a performer? How do you get on that show? You got to prepare a skit. How do you do a skit? You got to coordinate, cooperate, collaborate with other people. You need a writer, you need multiple performers. All of those people together have to work together to produce something. That's the definition of collaboration, cooperation. But what happens is you go through the week. They put together 2 or 3 hours of material, and the whole show is only 90 minutes. Well, they have to winnow down those 2 or 3 hours into the hour and a half, pushing other things, pushing things to the side. And that, of course, is the definition of competition. You need some sharp elbows. And so what Superbosses have done is they create teams where they do two things that a lot of people say they don't go together, they're opposite. You either create a collaborative team or you create a team that's very competitive. They do both at the same time. And why can't you? They do that. So there's lots more that I could share about what I call the Superboss playbook. But these are some of the key things around talent, around motivation, around innovation and creativity, around the apprenticeship idea, and even this cohort effect, this combination of collaboration and competition. What do you get when you do all that stuff? Well, I'll tell you what you get. I interviewed literally hundreds of protégés, former employees of Superbosses. And in some of those interviews, they use the word love way more than any business person has a right to use. I mean, really surprising. They felt this incredible connection, this sense of loyalty. And imagine what that does if you can create that within your teams. If you're going to lose great talent, don't just lose them and forget about them. Create business opportunities to leverage and benefit from that. Lorne Michaels, once again. Who are the late night hosts on NBC? Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers. Both of them are former SNL people, of course. So you continue to look for business opportunities to work together. So there's this sense of loyalty, there's this connection. For Superbosses, and there's really no expiration date when you get right down to it. There's one thing we know, you really never, ever forget a Superboss. Thank you.